to have that.
But they like to have it at home.
I know, right?
Yeah, do this one.
We already know that.
It smells.
One right down. How far away was that?
3 miles.
Did you get
I believe we are good to go.
Want to welcome everybody to the BOCC workshop. Thank you, Planning Commission and BZA members here today, both, or all Planning Commission? Okay,
Well,
thank
we
you.
got an alternate here.
Okay, thank you for being here, appreciate that. This is a workshop with the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. I think we're here to answer, or to ask and get some questions answered about the proposed amendments to the zoning regulations that you guys have been working on. This is an open, this meeting is open to the public to observe the proceedings. However, it is not a public meeting, therefore we will not have public comment or input. The opportunity for that public comment and input will be afforded on June 25th at the public hearing, which I believe is set for 6 p.m. in the courtroom. So that will be an opportunity for the community to have some input if they so choose at that time. So this is a workshop. It's not a meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. I did not call this meeting to order. I don't necessarily have to chair this or run this workshop. I guess somebody has to start, so I guess I decided to do that. No decisions will be made today on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners. I can tell you that Commissioner Kanda will not be here. He is representing the Board of Commissioners at a conference, and I think he is planning on being back in the Valley tomorrow. So this is for an information gathering only opportunity for the Commissioners. Typically we do not record either audio or via minutes a workshop, but the request was made today to live stream this, and I agreed to that. Spoke to Commissioner. Well, actually, I guess I did not speak to you ahead of time, and I apologize. I asked counsel if he had a problem with it, and he said no. So I authorized Ms. Gady to live stream this. So I'd like to begin, if we can. I know Commissioner Prince, you had requested a workshop, so therefore I would suggest that we start.
Okay. Vic, do you want to come join us up here at the table?
It's entirely up to you guys.
I want to have a few questions.
If you and the secretary would like to come up.
It's up to you.
Miss Jackie, you're more than welcome if you like.
Great, Vic, you just handle it. And
Thank you.
Okay, well,
Vic, if you'll turn your chair back so
Yeah,
you
let
can
me
kind of
see
see the
that.
audience
Yeah,
too.
and then your back won't be the camera either, actually. So
Well,
you didn't care about that, did you?
I'd like to start by saying I think your committee did an excellent job in fixing a lot of typographical errors, clarifying some issues. I think the vast majority of what the recommendations are clear, precise, to the point, and appropriate. I have a little angst, as you know, and I guess my first question would be, what prompted a revision at this time?
We started in, I think it was 2016, and at that time, and Jackie can correct me if I'm wrong, at that time we were approached by Jim Bradburn of Dark Skies about the possibility of amending the resolution to put a regulation in there. But those were just mainly just discussions. There was no workshops or anything like that. We started out, and I've got a chronology that might help out a little bit here. We actually started, if I can find it, in January of, let's see, January 2017, and that's when the appointments were made by the BOCC, and there was some confusion about how the appointments were supposed to be made, and so that's when we started thinking that maybe there was some need for clarification of that in the zoning resolution. And then subsequent to that, in April and June of 2017, the BOCC had some workshops, I believe there were two, and they were specifically to get public input on the dark skies proposal. Then in July 19th of 2017, that's when it was first referred, and that was a request by you. I believe it was, I wasn't there, but I believe it was a meeting in San Isabel where you asked the PC to work on the amendment of the resolution. And at that time, my recollection was it was for take care of some of the section 4 that had to do with the responsibilities of the PC, the BCA, and the associate members. And then also dark skies, and then you had a request from an individual to ban steel containers from the county. And so that was the first time that we got a referral from the BOCC. Then the next, and I think probably in between there, Jackie and I know Skip, we probably started doing some work on those just as an ad hoc committee. Then in 11/22, and this was when the new BOCC, the current BOCC, was sworn in, then Jackie and I gave the BOCC an update on the status of that, and at that time we asked you to reconsider whether or not that request for the steel container should be there, and you agreed that it should not be. So at that time we were dealing with just the duties and responsibilities of the commissions as well as dark skies. Then we had a meeting in February, a public meeting, PC public meeting on February 5th, and then we discussed it again on April 3rd. This was a PC regular meeting, and then in the meantime we were taking suggestions from various people that had, I know Lockett Pittman, for example, had some really good comments, and there was others that had comments, and so we would meet, and when we got these comments, that's why we have, I think right now we're at revision 9, and so we've gone through 8 of them before this. Then on, let's see, April that we had a regular meeting where we discussed it. On May 1st at a public, our planning commission meeting, that's when we approved the current draft 9. And then on May 7th, this draft 9 was sent to the BOCC, both in electronic form and hard copy. And then the latest was on May 31st when we had the meeting when it was decided to hold this workshop.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the update. And am I correct? First of all, there are a couple things I was a little bit, I didn't understand. That's why I asked you to come. I really didn't expect an audience, but I'm glad you came. Thank you. You know, I was just hoping maybe, and I can't do it one-on-one with you. I have to do it in a workshop. That's why I asked for a workshop.
Sure.
Because there are a few things that I really just didn't understand, and I was hoping I could get some better clarification. And I have some notes on the actual proposal, and if I could just go through those, and maybe you can help elucidate me on
So
what the concept is. Yeah, I'm
text.
going to go through, not every page, obviously, we have 100 some odd pages. But there were some things that I just didn't really understand, and before I approved or disapproved or whatever I did, I felt it was necessary for me to get a full understanding. So I'm starting on page 20, is where I am. And I'm seeing where you took out buffer and added buffered, but the definition is saying, is that just a semantics change that you did to change the word buffer to buffered? Is that the purpose of that?
No.
And I'm not in any big rush here.
And,
I'm just trying to find out what it is.
and may I interject just for a second?
Okay.
Are you okay, Jay, with when you ask a question or comment that it can be to the whole PC group, or do you want to deal with one person, or?
Well, I'm happy for input from anybody. I mean,
Okay.
more heads are better than one. I prefer to just ask Vic the
Okay.
question, and if Vic doesn't know and someone else worked on it, I'm
I
fine with
guess
that.
that's where I'm headed.
I am not
Okay.
putting, there's no way to put you on the
Yes.
spot.
No, I understand.
It's an understanding of what's going on.
No, we welcome this opportunity.
Yeah,
And
good,
this,
I appreciate it.
yeah, let me qualify this a little. Personally, I also believe that members of the planning commission would not be considered members of the public, because that's who our workshop is with.
Correct.
Are you
Yeah, I have
okay
no
with that?
issue with
Okay, good.
Okay.
Okay, to answer your question on the buffer, it was in the text, and we weren't sure whether it should be or not be in there. I think what happened is that it was referred to in text as buffered, but we had a definition for buffer, and so that's why we changed it from buffered to buffered,
Okay.
just to be consistent.
It seemed like it was just a semantic
It
change.
was a
Okay,
minor.
that's fine. One that really kind of I scratched my head on, and I'm obviously missing something, although I've looked at it multiple times. On the same page at the bottom, the definition of cemetery. It looks to me, unless I'm missing something, and I probably am, the new definition is the same as the old definition.
You're exactly right.
What am I missing? Oh,
Yeah, no, you're exactly
Yeah.
right, and Tom made the same comment, and can I indicate that you made?
Sure, that's fine.
Tom sent me some questions that he had, and this was clearly one of them. I really can't tell you why. I think probably what happened is that sometime in this process of these drafts, a decision was made to take cemetery out, and then later we decided to reinsert it, and the way the system works is that it's not removed, it's just crossed out and then put back in.
okay, that's fine.
Am I correct on that?
Because of green burials, the state allows you to have green burials, and we've taken out cemetery, and it had to go back in.
Right.
Okay. And can I just ask a clerical question? I know the crossed out, I get that. Red is coming back in, or being put in. Is red and red underlined the same thing, and is bold red underlined something different?
No, it's all the same, we were just trying to keep track of our
Okay,
different
all right,
drafts.
perfect.
And what we did, just another clarification, is we made changes all along, and then we had come up with a new draft. And we had different colors that looked like a children's coloring book. And so we thought, to be fair to you and everybody to examine it, is we just condensed those and showed all the changes that we made.
Good. Good, if I keep going.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
If we could go to page 22. Environment has been deleted, and I did not find environment anywhere else in this document as a definition. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is when we were working on those effects that come up primarily in special use permits, and they are things like dust and noise and light and odor's another one there. And we were debating how to present it, and we started by putting in environment, and then we decided that we didn't really need that in there. So the only place that environment comes in now is we talk about environmental impacts. an adjective and not a noun, but that's why we did that. And we were going back and forth on just exactly what terminology to use for these things that could possibly impact decisions that we recommended you, and then you subsequently make a decision on.
Okay. Let's see. Like I say, most of your changes I think are great. They're responsive and they're appropriate. Just because I'm curious, why, I'm sorry, I'm on page 25 at the very top, illegal lots.
Mm-hmm.
Just, why was that removed? I mean, it sounded like not being in your business, not trying to be in your business. I'm trying to understand why was that not a necessity anymore to have it in there?
I'll try to answer it, and then if I'm a little bit off, Jackie can come in. But I think what we did is we had Vernon and Elizabeth worked on it also, going through all the definitions, and if it wasn't covered in text, we took it out. And I think what we've got is an illegal lot. That's not the case.
Illegal lot, there's no such thing as an illegal lot, it's a non-conforming lot.
Okay.
But the reason it was
perfect.
it was
So,
taken out
it
because
was
we
taken
had,
out because we
it
don't
wasn't
even know
in
why a
There's
legal lot
no-
was in there.
There's no need
Is
for
now
it.
non-conforming.
Okay, that's why I said the caveat I did when I asked the
No,
question.
and that-
I'm not trying to get in your business, I just didn't understand.
That's a good
Makes
question.
perfectly good sense.
That's a good question.
Okay. You made some changes to the very next one, industrial lights.
Light industry.
Light industry, I apologize. Industry, light. What was it, what are we taking out, why are we changing that?
I
That-
don't
or
think
maybe
it's
it was a
changed.
There is no
change, maybe this was
change.
one that was the same as it was
Taken
before.
out and put back in.
And that may be what it is.
Right.
Yeah, that's what my note says. All right, now I run into where I really have cramps. A little bit further down, light pollution. And I'm just gonna be very frank with you, Vic. I feel a lot of this and a lot of the things that were removed is a blatant effort to kill any dark skies initiative in Custer County. Not the towns, the county. As I go through, I'm gonna make that comment multiple times. When you made some changes, you went from something explicit to something general, to some things that I didn't really comprehend very well, and I'll ask you about those as we go. So, could you explain to me why you took out light pollution, and tell me why it has nothing to do with you? When I say you, I'm talking about your group. Doing this as an effort to preclude the county from becoming a dark skies community.
Sure. And first of all, I'll preface it, and I think you heard at the public meeting when I spoke, I've been a dark skies advocate, and I won't, if some of the other members of the planning commission want to speak, I've been a dark skies advocate for as long as I can remember, since I was young up here. I donate to them every year. I'm pro dark skies, so it's not going against anything going against dark skies. I think it's a fantastic organization, and I fully support them. What happened I think light pollution is perceived as being another regulation in the county that people just don't want to see, and so and the reason you see it 2 or 3 times is because we put it in, and then we got some more response. We put it back. We took it out, and then we put it back in. And the last time that we took it out was after the public meeting, when people testified, and they were 2-1 against the dark skies regulation that had been proposed. And so, that's we try to do what the public wants and pay attention to them. So that's the reason we did it. And then the other problem with that we saw is that light pollution is the only one that had a definition of all those environmental impacts. And so we thought it would probably be better to call them environmental impacts and then and deal with the situations on a case-by-case basis. Nothing in here says that we can't put in a condition on a special use permit or a special event or home occupation, and those are the three most likely things that would come up. There's nothing that says we can't put in some kind of a regulation, recommend to use some kind of a condition that says they have to use a certain Kelvin, a certain lumen, a certain shielding. And we thought it would be better to leave that up to the specific case rather than put it in here because there was so much opposition to having it in here.
If I can respond, please, and I mean this very respectfully. The group that you had as your public meeting was staged, was invited, and was not representative of the community, in my opinion only. I'm not speaking for anybody else. I know about the emails that went out saying, let's kill dark skies, come to the meeting and tell us what you think. One of the members stood up and made the statement that if dark skies come in, it's going to lead to legalizing marijuana sales in the county. I get it. I don't feel it was representative of the county. I think it was representative of the invitees that you had who were invited because their preference was already known. And I recognize this is not a popular statement, and if you folks out there vilify me for that, I'm sorry, I'm just telling you what I think. That's my job here.
Sure.
So I don't feel that it was based on, I don't feel that the decision should have been based upon what I personally perceive to be a biased group. I've asked the question multiple times, what is the downside to putting this regulation back in and adding a couple of words that Dark Skies has requested, which is, and color temperature not to exceed 3,000 degrees of Kelvin. Okay. And hang on a second, let me just finish. And the response I got most of the time, and I don't disagree with this, is not a valid response, was we don't need more government regulation. And there is something very truthful to that, and I don't disagree with that. So the thought really got to me, and I started thinking, well, we have 147 pages, 157 pages of regulations here. That seems to be very self-serving as the one place to take out one regulation. I reached out to other communities to find out and to review their zone. I've worked a lot on this, their zoning and planning, a lot of them call them zoning development regulations. We are by far the largest one, by at least a third that I could find. Now, I'm not saying their Denver, I'm sure, is 500 pages, so I'm not going there, but I mean, roughly our size. I find it very difficult. I feel it's a self-serving committee group decision to hurt something, to just knock it off, not even give us, if we approve this, we don't have the option of saying, go ahead and make the Custer County a Dark Skies Committee by restricting light on a horizontal plane and the color, not the brightness, of the light. That color, by the way, anything above that color has been shown by the AMA, the American Medical Association, that could potentially be harmful. I get it. That's like talking about global warming. You may believe it, you may not. I don't really care. But I trust the AMA to, why would they say it if they didn't at least feel it at the time? As far as, and yes, I'm proselytizing right now, okay? I'm just giving my little speech. As far as I look at everything on what's the benefit versus the cost. I get a driver's license because I want to make sure that I passed a little test, so hopefully I'm not going to run over a bunch of people because I don't want to do it. I give up that freedom of anybody driving their car for that benefit. And I look at light pollution, I look at I look at Dark Skies organization, I look at the benefit, and I've spoken to both the mayors of the town, and Mr. Winky, Mayor Winky is new, so I did most of my speaking with one of your alternate board members about what has been the positive and negative impact. I've yet to hear a negative impact other than additional regulation. I've also, you know, I don't want to say that, I have heard that it's not bright enough to see in the dusk and the dark and when I'm coming home on the ranch. I understand that. But this is not an issue because the horizontalness of the light has been consistent. I don't know what the other 8 iterations of this document have, but it took number 9 to take it out. Being the color of the light, not the brightness, should have almost zero effect. And I'm going to talk about one other thing. This really would only come in a planned development community that would have to come through you and approved through the planning and zoning board. This is where this is only going to really come in, I believe. There's nothing in here that says that here's a fine for doing this. I've heard, so I'm trying to do this balance. What's the positive versus the negative? And to me, I keep coming up with the negative additional regulations. I get it. But what does it bring in? And when you talk to the 2 towns, you can say it's been very, very positive to them. It brings revenue to the towns, and of course, the county gets a little over 2% of whatever tax money you spend when people go to buy their stuff. And I'm not trying to give a speech, I'm just kind of unloading all my thoughts that have been harbored for a long time, so bear with me. So I'm very disappointed that the recommendation is to remove this. So I guess in this long dissertation, please tell me, what is the harm? And why are you being the committee, of course, opposed to keeping it in, adding the color of the light cannot exceed the one the same AMA says is potentially harmful? I don't know if it's been proved or not, so I'm going to use a potential. This seems to me like a detriment to the county that so easily you can approve. I'm done.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Don't you think we ought to let the professional guy talk about Calvin's and stuff?
I will after that. I need to answer some of the questions that you asked. First of all, as far as a public meeting, and we feel responsible to the public in the public meeting. I can't speak to your comment that it was biased. What I can tell you is that there was nothing that we did on the planning commission. None of the members went out and said, please come in here and testify again. We didn't do that.
I tried very hard to let you finish, but I must object to that. It absolutely was done, and I made a stink about it. I got really upset. Chris Nordyke put that out. I'm not sure if it was email or Facebook, whatever. I got it, and I said, this is wrong. And I made a stink about it, probably a bigger stink than I should have, but I've been known to do that kind of thing. But at any rate, yes, so saying that no one did it is, you may have forgotten that.
I stand corrected
And
because
that's no problem.
Chris did send this out. He didn't talk to any of us
I understand.
about that, and we talked to him. In fact, we talked about Chris recusing himself at that public meeting, and he talked with I think he talked with Clint about it too, and Clint said he could go ahead and do it. So you're right. What impact that had on attendance, no, I can't really tell you. So I can't really address that. The second point I'll make out of it is that this is not a regulation. All this is a definition. It's not a regulation at all.
I get it.
Yeah. And so we oftentimes refer to this as a regulation when in fact it isn't. And then the next comment I'll make is that we have been, I personally and the rest of us on the planning commission have bent over backwards to work with Dark Skies. And I'll speak to Clint here. We spent a lot of time with Clint and Jim Bradburn Clint made several large drafts which were in regulation form. We talked about them, and I don't know how often it went on, but we spent more time on dark skies than virtually anything else I can remember. So we tried very hard to do it. I think the irony of this is that the real purpose of this was not a regulation. The real purpose was to establish a reserve so that IDA could say that Custer County was a dark skies friendly community. But we hardly ever talked about that in the meeting. It was always about the pros and cons of definitions or how hard it is to enforce it. We never talked about what the real reason was for doing that, and that was to establish a reserve. And I don't know anybody that would be against it, and I still don't understand why IDA started out wanting a regulation, and then they finally come down to saying if you add this 4 or 5 words to a definition, all of a sudden it's okay with them. I don't understand it, but we tried to do everything we could to accommodate dark skies. But when it came down to the public meeting, it was 2-1 testimony against it, and we really had no choice but to vote against it. I don't know, does anybody else want to speak to that?
Also, we can put the condition on a new subdivision, on any SUP, that they have to be dark skies friendly. Also, there is many of this property out here that is in a land trust that you're never gonna see lights on. So you have to look at the big picture of the map of where there's not gonna be any lights. Also, the angst is that we don't have any way to test dark skies lighting. We don't have the equipment, we don't have the equipment for odor, but we put them in as a condition. Also, another thing came up that why are we letting Tucson, Arizona or Mesa, Arizona tell Custer County what to put in their resolution? That was another thing that came up. And we had 7 personal meetings with Clint Smith as the vice president of Dark Skies and Jim Bradburn as the president. Never before have we sat and tried to figure out something with anybody else. And like Vic, we spent 7 months before this even came to light in the public. So it wasn't like we just threw up our hands and said, we don't want dark skies. We did everything.
And I appreciate what you're saying. And I'm not going to discount a word you said. However, there were kind of like this is the 9th iteration of this resolution. There were multiple iterations of the dark skies that in the IDA, is that right? Independent Dark Skies Association, whatever the name is. Multiple iterations that they wanted to see in the resolution. Ultimately, they came back and said, and they haven't approved this, by the way. They may, if this was part of the resolution, they may say, not enough, we're not going to designate Custer County Dark Skies Reserve. And I appreciate what you're saying. However, I'm still trying to find the downside to this. I need someone to say to me, here's how I, a farmer, a rancher, a citizen in Custer County will be adversely affected if the definition of light pollution as it was stated previously and add those 6 or 7 words is added, because I personally know the benefit that the towns have had. I'm responsible for spending money that I get. The more money I get, the more I can spend. The more I can spend, the better it is for everybody. I'm obviously thinking that I don't understand why this has been killed. And I don't care where the organization comes from, it's good for this county, in my opinion. I think. But if there's a negative side to it, that's what I want to hear.
Yeah, and I understand that, Jay, and I won't argue with that, and I'll reiterate that I'm a strong supporter of dark skies. I think that we got off track on this whole thing because we want to reserve. I suggested to Jim and Clint that a better approach would be to go to dark skies and talk to you commissioners, and you designate some kind of a reserve or work on some kind of agreement with the ranchers where, like at Beckwith, to try to do that. Because what happened in the meetings was we talked about losing the dark skies. Well, that's not reality because there's so much public land in the county.
Absolutely.
There's the conservation easements, there's the right to ranch regulation to affect dark skies. So that's not a good point. We talked about Stan, how these bright lights are going to affect their health. It may happen in Denver or Colorado Springs, but not here. They talked about the effect on wildlife. I'm a wildlife biologist, and I would have a hard time saying that these wildlife around here are being affected. So my point is, we didn't talk about the main issue. We talked about these other things, and I think the perception was then among the public is that here's another regulation, and you do this and that and the other, and that's because of the perception of that wasn't really there. And so we understand that, but I think, and I'll ask any of the members of the Planning Commission to jump in, that we have to go by what we hear from the public, and we flat didn't get even a close vote regarding dark skies, and that's the best answer I can give to you, Jay.
Well, if I can respond, I absolutely, positively agree with you. Unless this county astronomically increases in population, the effect of one light here, one light there, a vapor light, whatever the things are, is going to make no difference to the dark skies we have. But what I'm interested in is getting that designation. Because when you speak to people who come to my store, come to the motels, come to the towns, they said, we came because you are a dark sky town. I think we'll have more people coming if we're a dark sky reserve, the county within the boundaries that dark skies has delineated. As far as the pollution factor, I absolutely agree with you. I think if everybody turned on their lights as bright as they can and point them up, we're not going to hurt our dark skies. It's that designation I want so I can attract the people. That's what I am. I'll go back to what I said earlier. This is my personal opinion, that there was a biased meeting. It was obviously staged by a lot of people were there by invite only, and I grant and I believe you completely, because I know you're the most ethical guy around next to Clint, of course, that you would not go out and stage something to try and get your point across. I know that didn't happen, and I agree with the vast majority. I know your committee would not do that, but it was done, even if it was just one rogue individual who did it. It had an, I believe, if it didn't have an effect, it certainly potentially could have had an effect. So what I would say, if that's where you're hanging your hat, I would say, let's table this for the moment. Let's go ahead and get a well-advertised community discussion again that, to the best of our knowledge and the best of our belief, is not going to be biased. And let's ask the question again. I mean, I can't speak for my fellow commissioners, but many people have asked me, gosh, I hope this dark skies designation comes, because I think it's good for the community. That is not a representative sample. That maybe 5 people have said it to me. You know, and people won't come to me and say, dark skies, get rid of it, it's bad for us. I won't hear that because people just don't come complain to me like that very often. They will to my fellow commissioners, but they don't to me. I don't know. That's besides the point. So my suggestion would be on the on the light pollution issue, the way you have it, if it was approved the way it is, if the commission is approved the way it is, dark skies reserve, the Custer County portion of it is a dead question. It's over, unless there's a change. So my feeling is, because we know at least the one meeting, and maybe it wasn't tainted, but it certainly had that appearance there, could have been. Maybe we ought to have another meeting. Let's invite the public, put it in the newspapers, and invite people to come, maybe at the bowling alley, I don't care if it's here, and let's hear from representatives from both sides, and I would feel much more comfortable. And if the consensus then says, you know, this isn't something we really want to do, you'll never hear another word from me. So, that just makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, I can understand.
Can I ask a question? Is this per Jim Bradburn or Clint Smith, the meeting, or is this just per you?
I have no idea what you're asking me.
Does Jim Bradburn wanna have another public meeting and put himself through it, or Clint?
I have not discussed this with either of them. This is as a commissioner, if we're talking about.
Because it was very
Hang
hard
a
on
second.
Jim.
And I apologize for that, because I recognize he's ill, and it's bigger than Jim himself, even though he is the dark skies guru. If we're hanging our hat on the public consensus, and we know there's been some, whether it affected it or not, we don't know, but it potentially could have. I would say, let's do it again in a more equitable fashion, and if the consensus is the same, no problem. I want to do what the constituency says, and I'm concerned that what I heard potentially could have been biased constituency, and I'm afraid of that.
No, and I understand that. When I spoke before, I actually just spaced out the fact that Chris had done that. So, and I have no way of judging what impact that had on there. I think another thing that I don't think any of us here questions how good Dark Skies has done. I don't think any of us question how it's benefited the economy. I was criticized, as well as a planning commission, by Jim for saying that we can't take economy into it. But that's not, if you read the resolution, we're not supposed to do that. And I don't think people understand that. We're supposed to base it on its impact on the county. I still maintain that, and I don't want to talk to Clint about this, is that we approach this the wrong way. And you know, I would like to see a reserve. I would like to see Dark Skies, and I talked to a couple of Dark Skies people, to go to IDA and say, look, we've got a unique situation down here, and to basically reiterate what you said, we're not in a threat of having our Dark Skies ruined. Why don't you reconsider and make this a reserve without jumping through all these hoops? But I think we're dealing with the perception now of overregulation, and my guess is that, we do what you ask us to do. So if you want to do another meeting, we'll be glad to do it. You know, that's not a problem. But I think now the bias is out there, and it's going to be difficult. You know, we even talked earlier about having it on the ballot.
Just because I'm a little confused, the bias is out there against it or for it?
The bias is about it regarding Dark Skies as being overreached by the county, additional regulation. Mm-hmm. And we heard that, I don't know how many times during the testimony, that one of the reasons we're in Custer County is because there's less regulation than the place we left to come here. We hear that all the time.
I understand.
And so I think there's a bias out there that we just don't want to be regulated. But if I'm wrong,
but on the other hand, we have 150 some odd pages of resolution here, when all the surrounding counties, the one in particular I spent the most time with was sent to me by Commissioner Keith Caddy from Montrose County. His is less than 100 pages, and it almost exclusively says, Ohio Revised Statute says this, boom. Ohio Revised Statute says this, boom. and there's a couple of paragraphs on how to man it, how long commissioners can stay on, they have term limits. I'm not gonna go there, okay? I mean, that's a commissioner decision when it's time to reappoint. But we have some members of the committee have been here a very long time, and my feeling is for the same reason, you throw the commissioners out every so often to get new blood and new ideas. Probably not a bad idea to do with all the, and I'm picking on your committee, all the committees. It's just a personal statement I'll make, but I'm not taking that on at this point.
Can we press on?
Can I ask a question? If you guys are doing a public hearing the 25th, then why don't you just have the public hearing cover the dark skies issue?
That's all I'm really concerned about.
Because it got 2 weeks notification.
I have a few minor things further. I mean, honestly, the truth is, I think you guys did a wonderful job, and I said that when I started, I mean that sincerely.
I appreciate that, I understand.
My crux is this one little issue, because I know the benefit that I have seen with my own eyes, and I'm still trying to figure out, other than the old regulation, why it should not be a benefit for the county too. But I'll move on because the.
But it is a benefit to the county, and I would not argue that again, and you probably heard me speak to that at a public meeting. I think it's great for the county. I would love to see it reserved, but we still have, the planning commission has its orders, and we have to do what we're charged to do, and that's what we did. And I apologize if there was any bias from our planning committee. I had no idea that this happened until after it happened, and we talked with Chris about that, but I have no way of measuring that.
And just, if I could just, I'm sorry to interrupt, I try very hard not to, but Chris was a true man about it. He came to me and he apologized, we shook hands and we were done, okay? I have no ill feeling about him or anybody else on your committee. I just want to make that statement, because he did the right thing. He said, you know, it was a really stupid thing and I'm sorry I did. I said, no problem, let's move on.
You told me the same thing. If I could interject, Jackie asked, well, Jim and then I think Pat, can we have an opportunity for them?
Okay, I have a few things. I made a few notes, I hope I represent them correctly. First off, you were asking about the light pollution definition. That's a bad definition. That is not a definition of light pollution. That is what causes light pollution. So if anything, that definition, if there's a definition that is going to be placed in there, it needs to be rewritten to define light pollution, not what causes it.
That's reasonable.
Let's see where we go. Where you talked about the AMA had a I believe the term you used, the AMA recommended a color temperature of 3,000 degrees Kelvin. First off, there's no such thing as degrees Kelvin. It's 3,000 Kelvin. So if we're going to have a definition, that should be an accurate definition and take that degree sign out of there. But secondly, again, if I wrote down my notes correctly, it was not a recommendation by the AMA. It was an article in their journal. And on top of that, they weren't sure that, if I read the article correctly, that 3,000 K may not be the limit, that 2,800 might be the limit, or even below that. And so, at some point, if we make a definition of 3,000 K based on whatever we base it on, that might not be a good definition, or a good standard. You talked about, let's see.
Can I respond to
yes,
that?
Yes, absolutely.
If that's okay. I was very clear in saying that the AMA made that comment.
Okay.
I also said, kind of like global warming, you can believe it or not. You know, I just made the comment that that's an organization I trust, the AMA, and they did make the comment that there was potentially, and I said as clearly as I can, they thought there could potentially be some adverse. I made it very, I never said this is bad for you. I never said I know we're like, because I don't know that.
I did not hear you say that. What I thought I heard you say is that the AMA recommended that. And if you didn't say that, if you just said it was a comment, then I misunderstood what you said.
So I think I made the statement also with, some of the.
Okay,
So
anyway,
it doesn't matter.
that was my point.
It doesn't matter.
Is that there is not all that much science out there to support that. Let's see, you talked about and this is not in my expertise is light actually, but you talked about the benefit that this definition would add to the county. Again, to paraphrase, I know that's not exactly how you said it. And you mentioned that there's the benefit of, because the towns are dark sky designation, you made this, I assume you were saying because the towns are, if the whole county was, then there would have to be a increased benefit. And I don't think that follows. I think
I
that
said there had to be, I said potentially.
potentially, yep. I agree. Sorry not to misquote you. I appreciate that. I don't think that's necessarily true. It could be, and we have no data either direction, that everybody who is going to come here because of dark skies will come here anyway. The second part on that is, I'm sorry I didn't have the time to go back to the minutes when Mr. Bradburn first talked about the dark skies. He stated that the minimum that the IDA would accept was a list of, I believe, 4 or 5 things.
Right. And it evolves.
And I talked to him, again, I had a conversation with him, and so I don't want to mischaracterize what he said. But essentially, I will say what he said, I could be wrong. Well, that's how he understood it, but he had not actually talked with the Dark Skies organization. And so he went back, and when it was presented with the definition that you have, he said that was the minimum that they would accept. And so I clarified again, is that what they said? And he said, well, they didn't quite say that, but that's what the conversation is leading to. So I guess my point there is, and again, tell me if I misrepresent what you said. You said the reason to add this new definition in is to promote or to get a dark skies designation for the county. Is that roughly what you said?
Basically what I said.
And we have no idea whether that definition will do that.
And I agree with that, and I made that comment too.
So we're trying to add something to the regulations. We're not taking anything out by doing that. We're actually adding something to the regulations that we don't know if it has any benefit at all to the community. So again, that's a personal comment.
I get it. I'm not sure we should be sitting here debating the pros and cons. We're really going over the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to state my opinion of why the definition of light pollution with a few words, I was trying to understand, because that's what I'm trying to do in this entire workshop, is understand why something was taken out. I'm asking, and that's why I asked Vic. This is not here to argue. You want to tell me I used the word debris and I shouldn't? I bow to your experience, okay? But the question was, you took it out, and why was that? And Vic and I have had that conversation during this last 45 minutes, however long we've been chatting about dark skies, and I fully understand where we are. I think you're more wanting to debate the pros and cons, and I think that would be better if the commissioners choose, and I'm not capable of doing this on my own, nor will even attempt to. If we have another meeting, that would be the perfect time to bring up, here's why it's wrong, won't work, whatever. So,
May I?
sure.
The only reason I brought those things up is because you addressed them first.
Okay.
And so I was trying to clarify
I
the
also made it
position.
very clear what's my opinion.
I did not say that.
All right, so move on.
Yeah,
We have
you
more.
have some other, well, yeah.
A couple of the things when we were talking about dark skies as a planning commission, and it went from a list of things they wanted down. The last thing I heard was that if you put this in the definition, then we're done. Well, that happened, as I understand, because in the last meeting we had, and Jim Bradford was there, asked him if he had ever presented the whole zoning resolution to them to read. And he said no. So it might have been a good idea to do that, so he did that, and that's when that part of it came out, as I remember right, about the definition, and that's all they needed. So not to reiterate, but that's, I just wanted to put that in there. One other thing is, when we were talking about this whole thing, the planning commission, when we deal with the special use permit, subdivision, PUDs, whatever it is with land use that they have to come in and get a permit for, we have the ability to place controls on everything they do within that permit. And we've done that on past PUDs and special use permits, home occupations, whatever it is. So we have that ability to do that because of the way this is written. And one other thing is, we didn't feel, because we have the control of this, we didn't feel that we should be changing the zoning resolution for special interest groups. And this is a special interest group. We've never done it before with anything else. Now that's what we decided.
That is a new concept that has never been brought to my personal attention before.
Oh, I said that in
has
one of the
merit.
meetings.
That was.
Yeah, I said that in
I
one of the
never heard.
meetings, because we've never done that in this zoning resolution.
Okay.
I've been on this 19 years, and I know that doesn't sit well with some people, but but we've never done that with any special interest group. We don't regulate for those groups, we regulate for the county and the people in the county. So,
Well, I think that comment is really good. I have to look at it from a little different point of view. And I have to look at it as what's the benefit to the county overall? So I can fully understand that concept you had, and actually I agree with it. The bottom line is, though, is it best for the county to not have it in there? And that's a question that'll eventually come to the commissioners. But I think that comment was an excellent comment, and I appreciate it.
I don't want to belabor it, but I appreciate Jim's comment, because Jim's an expert, and I didn't know, I had no contact with Jim, so I didn't know he was gonna comment, although he did in the public meeting. But when, at that public meeting, after we discussed this, the planning commission said they didn't want this definition that was presented by Dark Skies, and so we took that out. And then the planning commission further said that we were supposed to go through and take a look at all the definitions and see if they were appropriate or not. And we just heard from Jim saying that we have a problem with the definition of light pollution. And I think that speaks to your question of what's the harm of having it in there, is that if we can't come up with a good definition, then perhaps we're better off doing like Pat says, and leaving it up to the individual case where we have the flexibility to come in and put whatever conditions. We can, if somebody has some kind of a project they want to do that has lights, we can go to Dark Skies and say, what would you like us to put in here? And then we can do it. And we have that flexibility, where we may not have that flexibility with this definition. So I don't think we do any harm, and actually we might be able to do a better job the way it is. And and the other thing, and it kind of also speaks to what Pat's talking about, is that Dark Skies and light pollution has been on the agenda for a long time, and it's the only one of all these environmental impacts that we had any kind of a definition. We don't try to define noise because we can't come up with a good definition. We can't do it for dust. I know Tom doesn't like dust. We can't do it there. So we thought we're better off. We have done conditions on noise, for example, that's not defined in here, but we've done it like West Cliff Supplies by saying you can only operate during these hours. So we have that flexibility to help out. It's just, it puts us in a compromising position to have it in here right now if it's a bad definition.
now there's one other thing on my list. The 3,000 Kelvin. So I went to the hardware store and I grabbed a warm bulb, 60 watt equivalent LED. I got a daylight bulb. I had like 4 different kinds. Well, I use daylight LEDs in everything I have in my house. Outdoor lights too, because they're bright. I can see. They're 5,000 Kelvin. I'm not going to a 3,000 Kelvin because I don't like the light. So them telling someone in this county that they can go to the hardware store, but you can't buy this 5,000 Kelvin, that 60 watt daylight bulb, and that's all people look at, 60 watt daylight bulb. Oh, that's bright. Okay. Can't buy that one. You can only buy the 60 watt warm, is the 3,000 Kelvin. I got an issue with how they're coming up with what light you can have out there. If they're shaded with their, downlighting, what's the problem? I don't understand. I don't understand that part of it. So to put in 3,000 Kelvin in a definition, which isn't a regulation, by the way, it's just a definition. You can't regulate a definition. So, I don't know. The whole thing got so convoluted over a year and a half that I think people are fed up with hearing it. That's my personal opinion.
Jay, can I just say, and I realize, but on behalf of Dark Skies, we have absolutely no interest in pursuing this. And we don't want the hearing on June 25th to turn into another Dark Skies hearing. So, I mean, I appreciate you being a champion for Dark Skies and everything, but it's been voted on, it's done, and we accept it. And I just, for Dark Skies, we just don't want to pursue this any further through the, some kind of action by the county. So, I mean, we'd like to see a Dark Sky Reserve too, but I agree with Vic. If we're going to do that, we need to go to Dark Skies IDA and tell them, hey, give us a waiver. We're a very special community. Don't try to get some kind of governmental action to support it. So we were wrong from the beginning. We asked for too much, and even when we reduced it, it was still too much at that point. So, but thank you. I mean, I really do appreciate you.
I knew the benefits of the towns, and I really would love to have seen it happen in the county. However, based upon advice of council, really advice of Dark Skies, if they're not interested, I'm done, okay? I will not bring that up again. Can I ask a couple of other questions?
So it's not a Dark Skies hearing.
I appreciate your comments, you're very honest and forthright, and I appreciate
I've
that.
just been trying to help the county, thinking it would help bring revenue, thinking Dark Skies was still interested. If they have retracted, I'm done. I'm fine. It's not a problem. We're done. Okay. Can I go to page 29? I know we have no resort. I don't believe we have any resorts in Custer County. But it doesn't mean we couldn't have one. Was the same reason this was removed for the same reason as the other definition was earlier? Since it's not listed anywhere, there's no sense having a definition for it?
That's correct. It's not in the text.
Okay, gotcha. Sanitation facilities, I didn't really know, it's fine. Gonna go down to where I have my comments. You're gonna be out here in 10 minutes. Okay.
I don't think we're under pressure, are we?
Okay. I know a lot of this is driven by statute. I did look at the statute. You guys were right on target with it. I didn't have any problem with that. I am on I dropped to page 34, number 7. You there too? And I want you all to know, and I'm saying it on the record, Chairman Flower and I have not discussed anything in here. We have not planned anything. We didn't discuss how we didn't even discuss how this was going to go. I really appreciate, Mr. Chairman, kind of turning it over to me at this point. I'm going to give it back to you in a few minutes. But I don't want anybody to think there were any secret meetings or we discussed, oh, that's not good. I give you my word, that did not occur. Okay. Number 7, I'm just gonna read it, and I highlighted a portion of it. Any member of the PC-BZA or an associate member may be removed for cause by majority vote of the BOCC upon written charges, and this is where I have the question. After a public hearing, according to procedure outlined in state statutes and the Custer County zoning regulation, I could not find any state statute that talked about removing someone from a committee. Now, it's very possible I missed it, but I'm under the impression that same thing I did. I'm under the impression that all of the members of all the committees work at the pleasure of the BOCC, and I don't mean that in a I mean that in a positive way. That's the term I believe they use. Which means that if the BOCC votes to remove somebody, they have that authority. Is that correct, or am I missing something?
Tom had that same comment, and I went down, Tom had a list of comments, I went down and tried to address each one, and that was one of them. I'm gonna ask Skip, do you recall where it is? Because
3028-116, is that the
117.
statute?
117 sub
It's in
1.
there?
Yeah.
Says they have to have
Okay,
it
so
here?
it's under a state statute.
Okay,
yeah, and
that's
so
fine. And most of these, you quoted the statute, you didn't do it on this one. I looked, I didn't see it.
and that was an
It's
error on our
regulated by
part.
statute. I'm all done.
And I put the comment in here that we need to put that reference in there. That
So
was
it's 3028.
30-28-117 sub 1.
Okay. I see you took out conflict of interest. At first I almost had a heart attack, and then I realized you have it back in there later. I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't need a heart attack. I just, obviously, no one can do anything with it. Okay, I have just a couple of very small minor things later, and this is just an educational thing for me. Let's see, I made some notes. If you bear with me, I'll get to them. If we could go please to page 49, and I'm looking at procedures number 2.
Does that mean you have the same one?
That does mean I have,
Did you do that
at least
too?
I have it circled. I don't know what your comments are.
My comment is, I just can't see the BOCC being the hall monitor and determining who's present and who's absent.
I know, do you know what I think happened? Is, resolution 1202 was, put in here, and that's this section right here.
Right.
And that was the time that resolution 1202 was done, the Board of County Commissioners attended the meetings with the PC.
Okay, so
And I think that's where Mr. Naylor and
No
myself did that.
my suggestion was maybe we could add the recording secretary maintains role and attendance.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Tom made exactly the same comment, and I looked at that, and the first thing I saw there, it says, general rules for PC, BZA associate members, and then it says BOCC. Well, right away, that was a red flag. My suggestion is that this should be moved from here, put over on the page that where Jackie's duties are, and it said, she will record attendance at meetings, and that should take care of the
I think
problem.
that's fine. The only thing I would prefer, and this may, I don't even know if it's a resolution, if there is an excessive problem, you come to the BOCC and say, hey, we have a member, an associate member that's missed 9 of the last 14 meetings and we would like to replace them. And as long as you have something to hang our hat on is what I would like. So I would appreciate that change, because I'm not gonna go in there and take roll call, I promise.
Yeah, that's reasonable to use, Jackie.
Yeah, and I think we already have something underneath my duties that state that, don't we?
No, we don't, because I looked in there and we just, it's just an oversight, there's so much in here. But I think it belongs in the things that you should do. And then we could add in there that you will report in your reports to
Report
the,
to you, and you report to them.
yeah, like I report to the BOCC.
It does say that she will keep a written record of absences and abstentions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it
what it
does.
says, the BOC, it's conflicting with something that comes in.
I think that whole sentence just needs to be removed, because it's already in mine.
Yeah, oh, is it?
Yeah,
I'm
in the
fine.
duties.
Plus roll is taken with the minutes of every meeting, so I mean, you already have it.
But the
Right.
second sentence in that, number 2, is site tours are important, but are not mandatory. I don't know if you wanna throw that out as well, but that's up to you.
Yeah, I thought that was just kind of extra verbiage. I don't really care. I mean, it's just kind of a guidance. It's not a regulation. I know that. As a guidance, I didn't have a problem. If it was a regulation, I'd say it really doesn't belong in there, but I don't care.
Well, I think it's a good comment to take that out there because we deal with site tours elsewhere, so there's no point in it being there.
Okay. I saw you, and I don't have the spot right in front of it, just dawned on me. You're regulating towers to be maximum 100 feet. At first I said, ooh, what's this all about? And then I realized without a permit, I don't have a problem with that. Okay. I mean, because a lot of things come into that. Is it gonna obstruct helicopters?
And I think that was 100 square feet footprint, not 100 feet
Oh, I
tall.
thought it was 100 feet tall.
It's
30 foot
That's
tall.
100 square feet. And that's 100 or above, and anything, and you had that comment, Tom, anything below 100 feet, we don't regulate.
100 square feet,
Yeah.
not 100 feet tall. We're not talking about height.
No, we're talking about footprint.
I misread that, then I have no problem. I think it's appropriate to regulate anything, so put in a half-mile footprint, that wouldn't work. Absolutely. Okay, there's one thing in here that did jump out at me, and I'm hoping to find it, and then I'm basically done. And like I said, I mean, really and truly, this is, I mean, I know people came in here expecting me to go on a Jay Prince rampage, which I wasn't. It was really more to get a feel for what's going on and understand this better than I did. I can't find what it is, so I'm not gonna worry about it. Can I have one thing? I did mention at a board meeting that I spoke with a gentleman named Dennis Hunt. Dennis Hunt is, I don't know what his title is, but he's kind of the commissioner of commissioners, although he's not really a commissioner. He used to be. He was a commissioner, administrative person for the commissioners, extremely knowledgeable. I have consulted with him many, many times. I sent this to him and I asked him, what am I missing? What do we need? What do we don't have? And the only thing he really came back with, other than a lot of regulation, was he felt there should be what's called a parts, and please forgive me for not understanding this. In here, there should be what's called a Part 7, which is a regulation of lands around the county airport. He says C.A.
The overlay,
Okay, and maybe you have it.
Overlay or an influence zone.
That's what?
an influence zone or an overlay, and it's in here.
It's in
We
there.
have it, yeah.
Then I just missed it. He missed, well, that was his comment, he missed it.
Okay.
I don't have anything else, and I just want to tell you, I really appreciate you spending the time to come here and explain this to me. I mean, I don't like to wield my power and that kind of thing, but it's such an important thing, and it's so important to the county that I really want to get a good handle on it. You know, I would have been fine if just you came to explain it to me. I appreciate y'all coming, but this was never, this is not a witch hunt, it never was. I was concerned about, the dark skies issue. That is off the table. I'm fine.
And we appreciate your comments, Jay.
You have a public hearing the 25th, is that still on?
Yes.
And will
I think we
you,
have to by law, don't we?
will you be,
Yes.
approving this at that meeting?
No. Well, I don't know that, sorry.
I don't know that.
Can't say that. That
Or
was a
just approve
misstatement.
it?
I'm
We should
sorry.
have
It's a
it
public
on the
meeting.
agenda
I meant to
for
say,
the 29th.
No, I can't say whether or not we will or won't. Sorry.
If we made
So-
it a special BOCC meeting, we could. If not, we'd have to vote on it.
It's on the
next
agenda
meeting.
for the
Do you have a
29th.
comment?
Yeah, they do, on just, because this is about the county resolution. Going back, you know, this was, started obviously before the 70s, but went into effect 71, 72, whatever the date was. Maybe 15 years ago, maybe it's been 20 years ago. We had some commissioners from Chaffee and Fremont and Warfano look at our resolution and the zoning, the way we zoned the districts. And their comments to our commissioners at that point was they wished they had had the foresight to do that when we did. So, and this is an evolving document. I mean, it changes all the time. It's the way it is. So I think that the commissioners back then, you know, Ben Kettle and all them, I mean, I think they did a good job of what they did and how they zoned the county, or else we'd have a mess on the valley floor. So.
I appreciate the comment.
Yes, sir.
I'll
Other things?
turn it
Not
back
that
to
you
you,
can't
Mother. Hold
interject
on.
or whatever, I just wanna make sure we
Turn it back to you.
get through your list. I wanna commend Jay. It's not easy sitting here and speaking truthfully and honestly about one's feelings and their perceptions. That's hard to do, so I respect you for that. Again, I want to thank you guys for the work that you have put into this document as far as these amendments go. I've intentionally remained silent for a couple reasons. One, because I wanted Jay to have every opportunity to present your questions and comments and concerns. Some of my comments may not be relevant now, but I'm going to say them anyway. May not be relevant now in respect with what Clint Smith, as Vice President of Dark Sky, said. So that's my reference. This document to me has nothing to do with Dark Skies. Not one darn thing. There is too much work, there's too many hours, there's too much history to boil this down, and I'm not attacking you. I'm telling you my perspective. This is not a Dark Skies issue, this is not a Dark Skies document. We were discussing light pollution, correctly so. I just struggle with trying to the idea that all of the work and effort and years and months have boiled down and we're going to sit and argue about Dark Skies. That just drives me over the edge. There's significantly more to this document, and you articulately alluded to those, about the history, about what it's done, the foundation it's made for our county and our community and our lifestyle. The reason people are coming here is because of this document. I firmly believe that inherently in here is the good of Custer County and what attracts people here. I don't want to beat this Dark Skies thing to death, but I've remained silent, so I'm just going to throw a couple of things out. I truly believe, whether it's Dark Skies or anything else, I don't care how much you say something, that does not in and of itself make it true. I have heard Dark Skies preached since I took office, and there's not one shred of proof about Dark Skies, their impact, their effect, or anything else. Jim Bradburn told me we don't have any empirical data to support our claims. I get that. But I also get real tired of this idea that if we say it enough, by God, people will start believing it and then it will become fact. And that just isn't the way this country works. And it irritates me. I don't have a problem with continuing to preach for your special interests. That's fine. I get that. But I think there's a difference between that and trying to make people understand or trying to make them believe that there are facts surrounding your statements, when in this case, I don't believe there's one hard fact that anybody could prove. That's my opinion about that. I want to compliment you. I've been involved in agriculture since I probably slipped on the first pair of diapers, and I did not know a word that's in here that does deal with agriculture and land use, and that's the word subsidence. I had to look it up, for crying out loud. Page 24, just for the heck of it, it's not an issue. I just come across this word and went, oh my gosh, that's interesting. Subsidence is the sloughing off or the sinking or
Subsidence.
subsidence.
That's how you
Yeah,
pronounce it.
sorry, subsidence. To subside means to go down.
Yeah.
Sorry, subsidence, subsidence. So anyway, just wanted you to know that the learning curve is still going up. I sat in a meeting yesterday with the tourism board, and I asked them, they're in a process of coming out with a marketing plan and a branding scheme for our county. And I said, is it too late to have any other input on this branding, this tagline? And eventually the chairman finally got around to telling me it is too late. We're not taking any more input. We're not making this a contest. We're done with all that. That ship has sailed. There was a time and it's come and it's gone. I actually feel the same way about this dark skies issue with this document. I won't support having another meeting. I think we did it by consensus, so I will say I agreed to have the public hearing because council reminded us that it was actually a law, which I'll take exception to if I can find it in here, because I think this 14-day directive was for a specific scenario coming out of a meeting, but I'll get to that. June 29th, we have put on the agenda the item of approving the amendments to the zoning resolutions. Does that answer your question, Jackie?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I submitted some, mostly I think, clerical stuff. As a former educator, I just read through this document. While I was reading through it, I went, that doesn't make sense. I don't care how many lawyers have looked at it. I don't think that's a full, complete sentence. Those kind of things I submitted to Vic as the chair and Jackie as the secretary. I've got some other things that I would like to go through in the same format that Jay did, and you can illuminate me if need be. So I'm not going to address the things that I gave to you guys. I have every confidence if there's merit to those, your group will look at them. If there's not, they go by the wayside. Yes, ma'am.
Can we open some windows?
Sure.
Huh? That's making me hot.
I don't think it's fair to you that it wouldn't take very long. Number of us have gone over this and we've addressed your deals. So I think it would be good if we went and made sure that you understood how we addressed it. Not here, I'm not. We can do it later on. Not waste everybody's time.
Had I included these five, I wouldn't have much to say about this document because I would have already said it, give it to you, and I would trust you implicitly to do whatever was the correct thing to do. But unfortunately, from 2 to 4:30 this morning, put on my heart to go back and read every stinking line in this document again, which you can read it in 2.5 hours, but you got to stay pretty hooked up. You can't doze. Page 36, if we can digress. And before I get on to that, I want to ask this question, including our attorney. Is my understanding through my training in parliamentary law that you cannot force anyone to recuse themselves under any circumstance? That is a personal choice that a voting member of a group, organization, or body has to make conscientiously. Your language doesn't line up with that. I would succumb to council's opinion on that. We've actually talked about it before in a board of commissioner meeting.
And
maybe there are some other extenuating
What number is that?
circumstances. bear with me and I'll try to get you a page number. It's not 36, I was going somewhere else with that. There's, I think, 3 times in here under membership that you mentioned if there's a conflict of interest, basically the member must recuse themselves. I don't believe that's legal.
Well, I think we were talking about, we've had some instances in the past where, since this is a small community, you know, we all have jobs, we all deal with whatever we deal with. If I deal with the public in a financial way and doing work for them, they're in here and I'm on the board, you see a little bit of financial gain if you are on their side to do. We're looking at those kind of things, and that's usually what comes up.
Yes.
And I think in that aspect that they should recuse themselves.
You're exactly right, sir. And the key word there is should. You can't force somebody. That's all I'm saying. And here's the other thing about that. I've for years thought that in the whole recuse thing, if you're going to recuse yourself, if you choose to recuse yourself from something, some initiative, you're also giving up your right to debate and vote.
Yes.
That is not true. Unfortunately, by definition, to recuse oneself is to not vote on that issue. Unfortunately, I don't agree with it. I don't buy into it philosophically. But somebody that wants to abstain or recuse themselves from an item of business can still entertain or can still participate in the discussion and the debate of that item, which I think is wrong.
Just in case,
Yes, sir.
it's page
Thank
52,
you.
5, conflicts of interest, says the member shall recuse themselves.
Thank you. Appreciate you
Just want
looking
to find
at
it
it.
for you.
Yep, thanks. Yep. Yeah. So I just bring that up. I'm not out to hammer a nail in a cross on this. I know I've researched that till ad nauseum, and
We've had a couple of cases where the member has come to the chairman and said, I have this sort of going on, you know, with this permittee, whatever. And so they get the attorney involved and said, this is what's going on. And you just say, well, that's really not a problem, so you don't have to worry about it. So he said, yeah, you maybe want to recuse yourself. Just so the public doesn't have a bad taste in it.
yeah.
But saying shall is.
Yeah, shall is a whole different ballgame than should.
So change that to should.
Personally, I think so. Yeah, that would be my recommendation. Yes, sir.
Well, this situation that Jay and I were talking about, after that happened, I went to Clint, and I thought that based on this, we could ask him to recuse. Didn't you look it up, if I'm not mistaken, and say that it's entirely up to the individual to make that decision?
Right,
Yeah.
it's that person's choice, nobody else can make that
Right.
decision for
And
them.
is that in the statutes, or?
That's just the definition of what recusing is, but I don't recall that I've seen it in the statute. I suppose I could research it more, but it is an individual decision.
Yeah, and I'm not quoting statutes. I'm just quoting parliamentary law. So I would recommend should or may be requested to recuse themselves if there's a conflict of interest. But the word shall in there takes on a whole nother.
So we put should in there.
I would think so, yes, sir. So page 36, I'll go through these fairly quickly because I don't think there's any surgery involved here. B3, each member of the PC shall be a full-time resident of Custer County. Okay, bookmark that for a second because we have a conflicting statement. Page 34, 41B. So just kind of keep your mind finger on that. Page 34. So you've been down there. So one says that
Primary and the other.
primary residence, and the other says you have to be a full-time resident. So I'm just bringing that out. I think there's some discrepancies there that I would ask you to look at.
So,
And I think you're going to have to make a decision about that, right? You can't have both, in my opinion.
We're trying to figure, what does the county say, like as far as for voting? Is it, do you live here 6 months of the year, primary residence, or?
That's what they say for voting, primary residence.
Primary residence.
And that voting thing, I think the voting thing is a slippery slope. I personally know people that do not live here that voted in the election, in the recall election. I mean, they said I handed my ballot in.
I don't think I would recommend full-time residents, because we have meetings all year long.
That's true, yeah.
And we
That would be
can't
my
just have
recommendation.
someone come 6 months and,
Yeah.
Is that
Thank you
agreeable
for,
to you, both of you, putting in full-time?
I'm fine, but I'm not sure we can make that a decision.
no, that would be a recommendation from me.
Right.
You guys do
Gotta be
whatever you
careful,
want.
you know.
Page 38. I think this is probably the same thing. Number 4. There's 2 number 4s, and I'm sorry.
Top number 4 or bottom?
Well, that's what I'm looking at. Let me just check my notes. I had written down that the BOCC, by the BOCC, so let me just look here real quick. Yeah, the top. The first number 4. This whole sentence kind of freaked me out at about 3 this morning. The PC shall hear and recommend action by the BOCC. I don't quite get that unless I just was glazed over.
you're glazed.
Shall hear and recommend action to the BOCC? I don't question the word by there. I'm not following that meaning. I don't even know what that means.
Because we're recommending,
That you do something,
yeah,
or that you
The,
care.
the PC shall hear and recommend action by the BOCC. What action would the BOCC give to you
Approving
that
the-
you would recommend?
to approve the amendment.
Just like we're asking you to do with this, we're asking you,
Oh, okay, all right. Shall hear and you give recommendation. You're gonna recommend
right,
that you want the BOCC to consider.
right.
Okay.
I wonder about this, now that I see this. First of all, we deal with it elsewhere when we talk about that, because there's a procedure on amendments on how we do it. And I'm not sure we even need this in there.
Well,
And then the other, excuse me, Tom,
Yeah, that's fine.
is that we put in here master plan, when the master plan is the one thing that we are not required to recommend to you. So I'm not sure, I think we need to look at this harder and see if it's even necessary.
okay.
Is that agreement with you?
Well, this is under actions of the PC, or duties, or whatever the hell the heading is.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just,
So it's, one of ours is to hear requests for permits, to rule on them and recommend to the commissioners what we recommend.
Good.
And they
This
take
is,
their
okay.
action.
this is specific to amendments, so.
Well, no, not really.
no.
No,
Not if you read it.
I don't have a problem with that.
Oh, amendments to the text.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the intent of it. I have a problem with that wording. I mean, I get it that you say that the PC is going to hear and rule and then recommend to the BOCC or give to the BOCC their recommendation, correct? Am I getting the definition? I just struggle with the by. I was freaked out about that.
We can change that.
And I think I had clarification this for today, page 38E5, which would be the second 5, page 38.
Same page.
What board is this referring to? So, middle of the paragraph there, the secretary shall keep written minutes of the proceedings, findings of facts made by the board, and I asked Jackie for clarification. Are you the board of planning commission, or are you the planning commission board? My question is, when you say board in here, are you talking about yourselves?
So why don't we just spell it out, which one it is?
It's really the first time I saw the word board used, so it kind of wigged me out a little bit there. I would say made by the planning commission, by the PC, that's what you've been called all along.
Besides, you save some letters. Planning commission is PC.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and that's up to this point that I could tell it was the first time it wasn't called PC, it was called a board, and I went, oh, wait a
And I
minute.
think the only thing we've ever called the board is the Board of County Commissioners.
Yes.
Or Board of Zoning Adjustment,
Or board is on
Right.
but I've never heard the planning commission referred to as board, so that just, that was one of those things. Page 39, 8E, yeah, ED on the last word of E should, I believe, should say processed instead of process.
They trained you find it as a teacher as well. Well, think about that.
Here's the problem. If you find every time one here, what are they gonna do for draft 10?
It's true. I'm gonna let you deal with that. You know, and I thought about that. I thought, I'm not being weird about this. And I thought, you know what? This is probably one of the most professional documents that anybody is going to see in regard to this county and how it runs. And Jackie said, Tom, I don't know how many lawyers, I don't know how many attorneys or lawyers have looked at this, and what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to correct some things that are blatant mistakes.
But then did I explain to you why
Yes,
we have
yeah, and then we had a great conversation, and I'll follow up on that real quick, because I had some other issues, and I've since dropped those, because I realized this is a living document, number one. It has been hammered on, cut up, butchered, pasted so many times. It's not, it wouldn't be fair or prudent to say, I don't think this comma belongs here, but incomplete words, I think, are really different, so.
I know.
We've gone through the commas and semicolons.
Have you?
for all words.
Yes, go ahead, sir, sorry.
You told me that you had put out for bid, reformatting this whole thing once it got approved.
That is not a true statement, sir.
Oh, it isn't.
I did not, nor
Okay.
do I believe this commission did, but I think it has been brought up once
It has
before.
been brought up before. Okay. So, has that process progressed any?
Not that I'm aware of, I think it might be reasonable to pursue that.
Okay,
Because the first time.
Okay.
because right now it's a mishmash of two systems.
It really is, and I didn't question, I just brought to the attention that the whole airport overlay board, not the whole thing, but a good portion of the airport overlay is in a completely different format, different font, different.
Because that was done with that grant.
Right.
So
It was
that
just
was
pasted in.
Jackie's
so-
working on it. I mean,
Okay.
but Jackie's working on it right now.
Okay, because it'll save a lot of paper and so on. If you
Yeah.
get it in that, and you could,
Yeah.
then if you open a page in the middle of the book, you can figure out immediately what section you're
Exactly,
talking about.
yeah, and I spoke with the IT department today about that very thing. I had made a note in here on one of my things, it was section E, the third dot.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he said, yeah, it's a formatting thing, and you're exactly right, Ms. Darling. To correct that, really, somebody would need to go through and
There's a whole
reformat.
thing, and we're gonna ask for a couple of bids on it, but that's just like at the beginning of this whole rewrite, I said, do not take section A and move it to section C, you cannot be doing that anymore, because you got this all screwed
Right,
up.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to say too, and I just applaud you guys because you were very willing to go through this process for 9 stinking times. And then I never heard 1 ounce of grumbling when we directed your secretary to put the red line edition online. Not one time did somebody say, that's a bunch of crap, we should not. Nothing. I mean, you've been above board and willing to do whatever was asked of you from the commission that I'm aware of since November the 22nd. And I just think if I had been involved in the other 8 rewrites, there would be a time when I'd have a gut full of this nonsense and I'd probably say something stupid and regret it later. You guys have not done that. You have you have held the line and done your job, and I think that we will end up with a document that will reflect your hard work. I truly believe that, and it will be good for this county. This public hearing by statute is on the schedule for June 25th, 6 p.m. in the courtroom. I don't know that you are required to be there if you don't want to. It's a public hearing for the Board of County Commissioners, I believe, when you say, Clint, but certainly I'd love to have you there.
May I ask a question? If we come, can we sit in the good seats?
Absolutely, I would. Now, for clarification, Mr. Duncan, what you really are asking, sir, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're really asking is if you may sit in the first seat on the left, on the bottom row of the juror's box.
No, top row.
Top row.
Oh, I'm sorry, top row, so that you can lean back
And
and
he's
not
the
be
second
interfered
seat.
with.
He's the second seat.
And Pat's gonna sit right, and Pat's gonna sit right next to him.
And I'm just worried about the cush.
Yeah,
And
that's
there
right.
isn't any out in the audience.
That's exactly right.
There is not.
I would say we would probably reserve that seating for the planning commission if they choose, if you choose to show up. Again, I acquiesce here, Counselor. Would the chair of the Board of County Commissioners chair that public hearing as well?
Yes.
Okay. And obviously, we will hear public comment. There will be a time constraint put on that, as well as some other directives. I strongly believe that public comment, don't misrepresent me, man, it has nothing to do with me. Public comment is directed towards the chair, and the chair can distribute that comment however he or she sees fit. There's a reason for that, so we don't get into these personal attacks and yelling at each other and so on, finger pointing and all that. So that will be a directive that I would offer up as well. That, you know, anybody who wants to have comment will be timed. Do it in a microphone. I know in here it's that you announce your name and your address. I don't know that we'll go that route, but certainly they need to identify themselves, speak into a microphone, and speak to the Board of County Commissioners. So I don't want you to feel like you're going to get slighted or you're being ignored. That's not how the process is supposed to work. When they're addressing the board, they address the board, not individuals in the board or in the group. So those were all the things I had. Absolutely.
I'm sorry to come back to this. I remember saying, I think I said, there was one other thing that no one
Yes,
else
you did.
and I found it. And it's on page 49 on procedures number 2. And this is just a clarification again. It says, this is for people who are interested in joining either as an associate member or as a member. Letters of interest must be in the Custer County Planning and Zoning Office by the close on the last day of December. Is that appropriate, or is the letters of intent to be on a committee come to Brenda?
No,
the
no.
OCC?
It goes directly to them, and then they forward theirs.
That's fine. Okay, I just wanted to verify if that's the procedure.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, and I wished I'd have made a note of it about the issue. I brought it before, and I can't find it, so I'll just let it go. It's not a big deal. I spoke with Commissioner Kanda. He told me, he said to me, I do not have a problem with any amendments. Obviously, I think he will be in attendance at the public hearing, and of course he will be at the meeting on June 29th. Brenda, can you read the wording on that? Do you have that written down on June 29th, what the wording on the agenda says pertaining to the, thank you, ma'am.
You're talking about 25th or 29th?
29th.
Proposed zoning resolution amendment, that's That's all it says.
One more time, I'm sorry.
Proposed zoning resolution amendment.
Okay. Probably should write that to say consideration of the proposed amendments to the zoning regulations.
Adoption.
Approval
Or
Approval of
adoption, yeah, consideration, because if you
Yes.
put adoption, then everybody thinks, oh, it's already been decided, they're gonna adopt it.
Okay.
We're gonna consider
Okay,
that,
consider.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Consideration of adoption, or consideration for the adoption of the amendments to the zoning regulations. Resolution, sorry, I keep wanting to call these regulations resolution. I've had people say, you're gonna amend this whole document. Well, no, not really. They are adding, or they are amending parts of this document. They haven't redlined every line in the document, so.
Okay, consideration for the adoption of amendments to the zoning
I
resolution.
believe that's correct, yes. And I had actually given her the wording before, so it wasn't her fault, that was me. Yes, ma'am.
What is the stated purpose for the 25th?
Okay, that's a great question. I was gonna address that. The public hearing on the 25th will be to give the Board of County Commissioners and the Planning Commission, really, the opportunity to hear public comment specifically about the amendments. I won't allow as chair a bunch of other stuff. If it doesn't have to do with an amendment that you're proposing, we're not gonna discuss it. Because that's the purpose of that hearing. They
You
want
want to be careful because it's the Board of County Commissioners hearing. My planning commission already had our hearing.
right. I'm just saying you'd be welcome to be there.
Right,
Yeah. That's why I said if they're gonna comment to the commissioners.
Right.
But it's your hearing.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And I have a question, a technical question. First of all, do you want us to make these corrections prior to the 25th?
No, 'cause we-
I think
no.
so. I mean, I can't tell you
You
to do
guys
that.
could-
That's
this
up
is
to
a
you.
workshop.
It's a workshop. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm just
Well, I
saying
know.
that's up to you guys.
Yeah, I understand that, but, yeah.
They made recommendations, but they didn't vote on the recommendations, so
If you
the
accept
changes
them, I
are
would
not
like
legal.
to see the document with those changes if you decide.
So when are we
Right, I
gonna?
mean,
Okay, but the problem is then, and I'm not arguing for or
Right.
against it,
Right.
but we have the 25th, and then 4 days later.
You need to have a finished document on the 29th if you want us to vote on it.
So we've gotta figure out how.
So why
we-
don't you change it?
This is a conversation that the
That was
PC
my
needs to
question.
have, right? Nothing to do with the commission.
So why can't we
That was-
We'll
incorporate?
just have to see what the time limit and the schedule is.
It seemed like to me it would be best for us to incorporate, go through the comments that we talked about today, incorporate those, and then I presume we would have those available for the public to look at, so that they know the latest draft we're working with.
Yeah.
And the public notice that we have for the 25th has the links to the documents, so if we just update those documents on those links, then they will have access to that.
All I can really tell you is that in order for the commissioners to vote on your amendments, your proposed amendments on the 29th,
They've gotta be done.
they would have had to have been voted on by the majority of your planning commission to approve those amendments.
But I would really appreciate it if we could have whatever changes you make up on the website, so if any of the public would like to see what it is, they have that opportunity when they come to the meeting on the 26th.
And I would guess, Clint, technically, we posted that red line drawing kind of in conjunction with our 14-day notice.
Right.
We wouldn't, I don't think by statute or law, have to repost. Because this is just another step here. We're not deciding anything. We're really, for for the 14-day notice, it goes back to the document that was posted on the website, the red line
It does,
version.
because this is a
Yeah.
workshop.
Right.
See, we've got, you know, we still got a problem because we've got to incorporate, and there's suggestions, I understand that, and we've been doing this all through the process here. Then we would incorporate, we'll go through and take the suggestions, and then we will have to have a vote. I guess you'll request us to have a vote of the planning commission as a new recommendation. I mean,
Absolutely.
Keith made the point, we've already made the recommendation, so who makes the
Well,
final adjustments?
okay.
But they are unless they specifically ask us to make those changes,
Which they can't, right?
which they can, but they don't have to ask us to make the changes. If it's like a change in wording or something like that, you can actually make those changes yourself.
We could. I think we could recommend what we did today. I think we're within the realm of the purview of our.
In a workshop, they can't make decisions.
No.
We're not making decisions.
To make a
A
suggestion.
recommendation or
But the
suggestion
planning
is not a
commission-
decision.
Okay, but the planning commission has got this document out in their hands. Cause they've already voted on you seeing this document. So the only changes that can be made would be a recommendation from the Board of County Commissioners.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the planning commission
I
right now.
disagree, ma'am, because you've made all of these proposed amendments without our direction.
But we also had a meeting that said we brought you these proposed changes on draft 9 on our May 1st.
I believe it was not to vote on, but to review. Now, I could be wrong about that. I'd have to look and see what the word was.
In our meeting, the motion was made to recommend that this document,
Okay.
as is, goes to the commissioners
Okay.
for your,
Approval or disapproval, one of the two. Okay.
or amendment, whatever. I think probably the easiest thing to do as far as the document, because we've got
We don't have the
a
correct
timeline
timeline.
too,
Well,
is that there's a, I don't know if it'd be easier to do a separate, line item sheets listing the proposed amendments and the wording changes that can be given to the commissioners.
let me
so
throw
they
this
have
out.
it all.
We don't have to do it on the 29th.
No, you don't.
We can move that date to whatever you guys works for you.
You can
I
do
don't personally care as
Right.
commissioner, so.
But,
we-
but where I'm getting at is it's already in your hands.
Okay.
It's not in the planning commission hands anymore.
But,
Wait.
just a minute,
No, my turn.
no, it's my turn. Yeah,
Chair always outranks secretary.
I think that we work for the BOCC. I don't see that there's anything wrong for you requesting the planning commission to make revisions, and then we would have to, we could send out we could maybe vote by email or something like that.
Well, we're not gonna request that today, because that would be an action.
No, it would have, but couldn't you do the same thing by email? I mean, are you gonna do that?
No.
Commissioners probably
No,
can't.
and Jackie's right, if that was the wording that you guys voted on this is the document we're presenting to the board for approval or disapproval, then we need to deal with that.
Right.
No problem. We were headed there at our last commissioner meeting and then went down a different route.
So,
Well, we did table it, actually, I believe the
so it
record showed
makes
that.
sense for someone in the committee that write out the discussions that we had. You can give that discussion to us. When we vote, we'll vote however we vote when we have the meeting with the changes that you have just suggested to us at that time. We'll suggest to make those changes based upon what was discussed today. Is that a scenario that would work?
I don't wanna vote on the document unless it's
Clint, I
done.
wanna make sure we do it right.
You can
First,
take the suggestions that you have given today that we agree with. Okay? You can actually adopt the resolution pending those
change.
these changes,
Contingent on.
contingent on these changes.
You do that.
We could, I don't
You don't like to do
particularly
that?
care to do that, not in a document like this. There's too many rooms for error,
But we have
too many
these
rooms
spelling
for.
errors, shall,
Yeah, I mean-
should.
But shall and should is not a spelling error.
No, that's grammatical.
That's,
What-
But
More
they're just
serious.
small little,
Which, as a commissioner, I wouldn't nitpick this revision 10, draft 10 about commas and, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm done with it. I've given you my suggestions. I just get a little nervous about voting on something of this magnitude that we don't have in front of us. Now, we do it. We've done it with resolutions, we've done it with IGAs. So it certainly can be done. I'm not saying it can't. I'm telling you how I feel personally.
Well, you as commissioners will be signing this document when you
Right.
approve it with changes, whatever. So approving this amended document with the following changes,
Exactly.
contingent on these changes, okay, now we can print up that document, make sure.
And then
all the
come
things-
back.
Then you come back, and then you sign it, then it's done, because
'Cause-
until you sign it, it's not done.
and
That's
you don't,
exactly the way
you
to
have
do
the clause statement that's separate, that you gotta sign, that's not in this document, that goes in the back of this document. So if you don't, and then you're not gonna get a red line, you're gonna get a cleaned up document, then if you don't see the should, or the shall change to a should, and that one line gone,
You don't vote it
then
in,
you don't vote on it.
or you don't sign it.
Then sign it, so make the changes, bring it back.
Yeah, I'll do either one. I was just telling you where my comfort level is, so. Yeah, I would think your chairman would take these changes, submit them back to the PC. I'm gonna sit here at some point believing that the PC had voted by at least a majority of, well, actually, it may be 2/3 majority on a change, amending a resolution, we'd have to look, but that you guys are gonna vote to approve these changes that we're recommending, correct? As a PC.
I think we should.
Yeah, you should, that's exactly.
Then we're gonna be way off, because in this resolution, there is no way that we can vote by email. We have to have a 2-week notice in the paper, and then we have to have a planning commission meeting.
Well, maybe what we're trying to do is rush this.
I was just gonna think,
Yeah,
Because I
maybe
don't-
we oughta go through here, if you, and I don't know how we do this technically, but if you request us to make those changes, and then at our next meeting, or we can call a special meeting and do it, advertise it properly, come up with a draft 10, and then submit it to you, and then you can schedule a meeting whenever, a BOCC, whenever you're meeting, and we could still have the 25th and take comments, but there's nothing that, we're just trying to force this thing to.
Yeah, I put it on the 29th in the event that we needed to do it, we needed it on the agenda. We'll pull it off the agenda today, it's not a big deal, doesn't matter to me, or it doesn't matter to us, I don't
And
think.
also, why don't we just wait till after the public comments and change this document just one time, instead of going back and forth?
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's very reasonable, because the commissioners may have other recommendations following a public hearing. They may not, but if they do, and you'd already done revision 10, because I don't think the commissioners are in a big hurry. We're functioning with the document that's legal right now anyway.
Been
So
2
I'd
years,
say
so
that's
we
up
can
to you
afford another
guys,
month or
but-
so.
2 years.
Plus that public hearing on the 25th was on this.
That's correct, that's what I was saying,
Not a
on the
change.
red line version that's on the website now,
Yeah.
not on these changes. So Brenda, let's delete that then from the 29th, which you already have. Thank you.
Can we have
So, and I won't put it back
Yeah.
on until you request such.
Yeah, and in the meantime, we'll work on, to get our act together, we'll go through all these comments, and then Tom's got some other ones, and then we won't make any changes, but we'll work on them, get staged, wait till after the 25th, and then move forward from there.
And then we'll
Now-
have our own meeting.
Yes.
And as a PC, vote on make a motion to recommend this new version with the amendments and
Yeah.
suggestions.
Now, if you, Jackie has a point, you've sent it to us once, if we need to vote on that, we can. Which I would guess.
You'd like not to because you'd like some changes.
Right, personally, I can tell you how I would vote right now, I don't have a problem with that, I'll vote it down because it doesn't have the changes I'd like to see in it.
But you also gotta remember, we're dealing with this red line.
Pardon?
We're dealing with this.
That's
red line.
correct.
And this is the one we're dealing with. You can't switch the red line in the middle of the ballgame.
Well,
Well, plus as a
I agree
commissioner,
with Pat. I think, and maybe council needs to jump in, but I think if you say to us, these are some additional recommendations we'd like to make, we can vote on this document. We as the commissioners can either choose to accept those or not. If we accept them, we hand it back to you and say, I'm just reiterating what you said. We hand it back to you and say, make these changes, which are the ones you recommended to us, and then we sign it when those changes are made and come back to us. I mean, I think that makes sense to me.
Just for the public, if the public does not know what the recommendations were today, they may come to the meeting on the 25th and go, online such and such, and you can say, yeah, we already fixed that.
Yeah.
So that's wasting your time, wasting their time. And I don't know if there's a fix to that, but if you wanted to list the things that we caught today, that you caught today, and put that up on the website, say these are things we caught, so you don't need to, public. I don't know if the public cares, so.
Yeah, I thought about that kind of same thing. If we don't do something, personally, I believe we leave the red line version that's on there, because that's what we posted the notice with. And if we come up to that scenario, I'd say, yeah, we discussed that in a workshop, and that was a recommendation or a suggestion to the planning commission. Move forward. Other questions, thoughts from the PC about this? Yes, sir.
If you come up with the item that you're trying to think of.
Yes.
At 2 o'clock in the morning, he's always available at 2:45.
I think you CC everyone.
That may be a better. Yeah, I'll work on it, and probably start with attorney, because to me it was some legalese that I just thought they're not talking about the whole document, they're talking about a specific thing. Yes, sir.
you know, at the hearing, since we're going over this and any other public comments and changes, whatever, you as a board of county commissioners don't have to approve or deny this or do anything like that, but you can request that it goes back to the planning commission, make the changes, vote on it if that's the way, and represent it to you. Since we already did that with a motion, you can have us do that again.
That's true. Yeah, and yeah, I was going to make a supposition about the hearing, but go ahead, speak. That's why we're here. Let's talk about it now, so we don't.
And I guess I have a question for the attorney about that. If you're actually changing the document, and maybe if you don't change it significantly, you have to, as the Board of County Commissioners and the Planning Commission, have to hold another public hearing.
I don't believe so.
No, I think if it's agreed this is the final document with those very minor changes, that's it. You know, it's a done deal. You don't need to have another hearing.
Yes, sir.
If Clint or Jim Bradburn at the beginning of the meeting could get up and say, Dark Skies wants to bow out of this, that should shorten the meeting by 75%.
You could hold it in a phone booth if they're not going to come and argue about Dark Skies.
It's not in there.
But it's been publicized that Dark Skies is rearing its ugly head again, so that's why I wanted Jackie to make it clear, and the Tribune should make it clear.
Yeah, it's not in there, but they will extrapolate Dark Skies out of deleting the light pollution.
But as you said previously, as the chairman, you have to rule over and set the parameters that we're here to talk about these proposed changes.
And one of them is light pollution that's
Well,
being
that's fine.
changed.
That's fine, that has
Then
nothing
critical,
to
but I
do
agree
with
with you.
anything,
Right,
it's
that's
just a
good.
You just
definition.
saved an hour today,
Oh, yeah.
had that statement been made earlier.
Right.
But you might have had indigestion this evening too.
I had cramps last night reading it, I'm sorry.
I did too, eyelid cramps.
And that's because we care, and it's not because we're trying to hurt anything, really and truly.
No, we wanna do it right.
Page 2.
Page 2.
Page 2. And
Oh, good.
it's just
And
as long as
this
page
is one that I wanted to bring up to council, and I beg your forgiveness.
In the table of contents?
Well, you need your page 2.
Page 39, yeah, my page 2.
Oh.
Your page 39, I'll go through these very quick, I won't even comment, I'll just bring it up.
No.
Page
Take your
39,
time.
number 13. Again, I'll defer to council. When the chairperson calls for a vote, each member shall render their vote.
I had a problem.
You can't force the
No.
member to vote. You can say
After all
present.
votes are verified, each member shall give a verbal statement explaining their vote. I don't believe that's according to parliamentary law. I don't think you can force people to do that. If that's what you want to do within your bylaws,
We make a
We don't have any
mailer,
bylaws.
so I would question the legality of number 13, that's all.
Well, there really isn't any, and
Maybe it's
John
the reasons.
Naylor recommended that we do that, so people would, in the audience, would know why you're voting that way.
And
So are you suggesting
it's
changes?
reasonable, but I don't think you can force anybody to justify their
our
vote.
other council told us that if we ever went to court, we had to have the reasons and stuff. No, we don't force you to vote.
Well,
You can
But
document
why
their
are you on
reasons,
a
but,
board
I
if you're
think-
not gonna contribute?
oh, you contribute by debate and vote, that's it. Justification of your vote has nothing to do with contributing.
I'm under the impression you can't force someone to vote, because
No,
when
no.
the chair goes, each member shall render their vote.
Could you change, just like we did before? Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Well, the
Change
vote
it to
could be
should instead of
abstained.
shall.
It could.
Could be abstained.
But abstaining is not a vote, it is denial of your right to vote, so it's,
Right.
So change shall
It's
into
semantics.
should?
may be asked
May.
to,
Or just
may be
may.
requested, may justify. We do it in commissioner meetings, but we're not forced to. But there are times
When we do
choose
that, I
to
like
justify.
that, we
It's
can.
may,
What do you want to say?
may,
Render their vote.
And then may
Well,
give a verbal
no, no.
statement.
it should really, I mean, Parliament, it'll say it in there, that each member should vote.
Yeah, but not shall.
No.
Should.
They
And-
shall have the opportunity to vote.
That's fine too.
When the chairperson calls for a vote, each member may render their vote. After all votes are verified, each member should give a verbal statement explaining their vote.
I would always change that.
I struggle with that.
Maybe it's
May,
May.
I
ask,
think may
well,
makes
yeah.
more sense
Yeah.
there too.
Will be
Okay,
given an
so
opportunity
both
to-
those shalls
Each
are
member will
mays.
be given an opportunity to explain.
Yep.
And that
If
means
they don't want to, they don't have to. That's parliamentary law.
Boy, I'd sure like to see this book.
Here, darling, I sleep with it, but go ahead. Page 44. Number, I want to make sure there's only one number 9 on here. No, there isn't, gosh darn it. Let's see, each member, oh, sorry. Again, it says each member shall justify their vote.
We'll change that the way we did.
Top nine or bottom nine?
I'm looking.
Top nine?
Yeah, top 9, the first 9. Same language
When the
in there.
chairperson calls
Says
for
will
each
will
city
render.
member-
It should say may.
May.
May render.
May,
May.
We'll just do the same thing we did
Yeah.
on the previous one.
yeah. And I guess, not to beat a horse, I don't know how you verify a vote, technically. But,
You just
Well-
didn't hear an aye from the audience, you go, wait a minute,
Yeah.
who was that?
yeah.
And so will is in there
We always
twice.
do roll call votes.
Okay.
That's the better way.
Yeah, we do roll
Yeah.
call votes. Which gets a little,
Yeah,
embarrassing
and then
sometimes,
page
but- or
79,
uncomfortable.
I don't think Jackie, I had a chance to ask you about this, so I may,
Which one?
page 79, 9.7.c. I did ask you about this, Jackie, but I couldn't remember where it was. You have left smoke, odors, noise, dust, and similar impacts in here, when I think in all these other places, you've taken out all of that and just put in minimize the impacts.
It's a special use submission.
Okay?
And so that's where you
Is
get a
it a little
special
different,
use
handled
permit. It's a
differently?
little
Because I
different.
know the further we get into the document, everything starts to change.
So it's a
Yeah.
special
Okay,
variance.
all right, we're good there. Okay, thank you, I appreciate your.
Is there a page 3?
Yep, and it's blank.
Uh-oh.
Page 3.
What'd you do, fill it?
Um,
Out of order.
and I did ask about, is the 100 square feet, the intent was the footprint?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
That comes from-
100
that
feet
comes from
square.
our 100 square foot
10 by
building.
10.
Well,
Building
yeah.
code,
Yeah,
exactly.
That's right.
but
Building
square
code.
Well,
That's right.
Or
big
100 feet
difference
square,
is,
yeah.
could be 20 by 5.
Five, right, but I mean,
So
no bigger
100
than.
square feet. But it said 10 by 10 in there, correct?
No, I just said,
No, I
it doesn't say 10 by
don't
10, it's
think
just
it's
100 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah, cause some towers are triangular.
Right, right. And just for point of clarification, we are live streaming this. Dennis Hunt is the manager of administration and grants for CTSI, which is County Technical Services Incorporated. Thank you. Yeah, he is the manager of their administration and the grants up there in Denver. Thank you, folks. Appreciate that.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you for your comments, we appreciate it.
June 25th at 6 p.m. correct?